I think that the information in the museum is not really immediately accessible.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think one walks into the museum and absorbs that in a minute or two. I think the work will be very successful for people who have never seen it before,
Mm-hmm.
that encounter it now for the first time in that setting. They're going to be very surprised, maybe even very angry as to what that is doing in the museum. Frater and I were in Basel in the museum on the top floor, and we came across these little cases with small sculptures in them. But I was so taken with the sculptures, just couldn't leave the room. We wrote down his name to ask people who was this person and where you found him. The materials immediately were unbelievable, and the only thing I had seen like them in execution seemed to me the early Picasso Cubist sculptures. The only thing I could think of, and it took me a long time with a lot of questions to really begin to understand it. All I know was intuitive, and I knew that there was something there that I had to understand. And so in the beginning, those were not particularly valuable materials in the society. But even felt, to get felt made in this country now, what you want, any kind of felt like that, is already an enormous endeavor. Two companies wouldn't make it for us, really. They didn't want the responsibility of making felt. The purpose of the shock is to stimulate, is to get people to begin to think why it looks like this. Why did the artist use this materials? What's this about? Because you just look at that and you can take it as a minimal sculpture, let's say. One of the fonts can look like a very huge minimal sculpture. You either can take it or leave it on that basis and walk right out of the room in a few seconds. But because it looks like it is, because it has so much volume about it, you are very surprised to encounter that. Why would someone use so much of that kind of material to make such a piece? And finally you begin to get into the fact that they are either a receiver of energy or a sender of energy, and what kind of energy, and why would one worry about sending energy or storing energy, and how does that relate to human beings and our lives, and finally how does it relate to the planet and resources. And I mean, the meanings in this are very complex, but the initial way to get people to react to it is just the shock value of what that looks like. The picture in the Soho News of his smiling like that is, people say, oh my God, there's Beuys just smiling, always just looking like this.
Right.
And he's used his face and his body exactly for the same shock value as he would in making any other kind of sculpture. There's no question that he's using his body to make art. All the time, whenever there's a camera clicking, Joseph goes through various things that are without question a living sculpture. And I think that's the same when he draws on a blackboard during a lecture or a dialogue. To me, it's not much different than Jackson Pollock dancing around a painting and dripping paint. Well, generally, they were very small audience things. His actions were not mass audience activities. They were done in strange places, out-of-the-way places many times, or found spaces. He'll work anywhere. I mean, say, Joseph, we're going to a great hall tonight and you'll speak, it's okay. And if you say, we're going to go to this little room and you're going to talk to people, it's okay. And I think that in the beginning he did exactly what he tells his students. Get an idea, get a hammer and a nail and start. And I think that's how he started with his actions and his performances. Whatever was available, whoever was interested, that was a friend, and he began. For another part of the audience who knows what the man stands for and what he said and what he believes and what he's done in performances, they're coming to look at these things, and that already is information that's in their head. For other people who are looking at it, there's no way that they can crack instantly standing there what some of these pieces can possibly mean. And I don't find that that's a very bad thing. I don't find that that's negative at all. I think that's very positive. That's divorced from the artist lecturing, talking, performing. They can have the look of leftover pieces. And the question then is, how important are they as sculptures and how important are they as drawings? I can't see that one doesn't have to work a little bit to get more and more information out of it and then apply your own mind to it. Just use Beuys as a springboard and then take it from there.
As a kind of catalyst.
As a catalyst. I think that's all he's after, and I think that's what he means the work to be. I think in this country it's going to be an introduction to this kind of art. I mean, if we take Beuys seriously, which I do, and if anyone else does, the piece he did that the silence of Marcel Duchamp is overrated is not a small statement. This is a very important point of departure. Now the show is about to open, and I really have no idea. I'm prepared for anything, and I expect that it will be misunderstood in many quarters. I visited Beuys many times thereafter, And we continued to talk, and I made a case for his coming to the United States, which I thought was overdue and that he should do it. He was very busy in Germany. He didn't want to come during the war. I believe that his English wasn't as great as it is now. He wasn't really able to communicate so well in the English language. And finally, everything did come together, and he said, I'll come. I asked him to do nothing. I just said, come, what do you want to do when you come? Would you be willing to travel? And he said, yes, I'll go anywhere. I'd like to have dialogues. And we just started. Well, I think the time is right to probably long overdue, to open up the possibility of the kind of art that Beuys is involved in, which is without question very political, and a kind of art that is not something simple at all. And I think this is the moment. There are many, many options that are there, but it's better than having a cloud. Everyone says, this work comes out of Beuys, this work doesn't come out of Beuys. Beuys doesn't mean that, it's not about that, or it's not important, or let's forget it, or he's German and we shouldn't pay attention to it. So I find it very easy to say many things are art that many people will say, that's not art, that can't be art, we won't allow that to be art. And I think if you use Beuys's definition of art, which is very open and very lovely, I think, and I use it all the time, art equals creativity. And if you take it a step further on some of the blackboards that he's written, creativity equals national income, I think you're really getting somewhere with that. It's a very strange paradox to say that Beuys's pieces are, in the beginning, an enigma. You don't know how to crack it, but yet Beuys wants to reach a larger audience, but maybe it's not as accessible. It's his product in the world is making art. His product is to do artworks, and if he's running for office, that's an artwork too. It was a ballet to watch him install this work. Absolutely a beautiful sight. I think there's another way to view the Guggenheim as separately from separate pieces. Mm-hmm. And I think you can view the entire installation, everything in it as one work, and then take it apart piece by piece and get something from it. But you can almost tackle the whole museum. Nothing is corrected in the museum, as you know. He didn't use any artifice to correct an angle. Everything is natural in the museum as it is, and I think you almost can take the whole museum as one work. I think other artists are the most receptive. I really do feel that way. I think that would be a primary audience, and I think young people, students all over the country. I think that I've learned this from artists also, very importantly, from particularly an artist that I know, that art in the future should be used. People should use it in their lives, and I think that's quite spectacular. Well, I think certain elements are absorbers of energy and store it. Let's say like a glacier, and early on Beuys did monoprints and drawings of glaciers, and finally this was stored energy which could be considered chaos, like let's say a nuclear plant. Maybe it's going to blow any minute, we don't know. And only when we see that, when it, let's say, melted down, when the glacier is melted down, it becomes rational, and we can begin to deal with that is rational, like our minds might be. And some objects, some materials are the conductor of energy. Let's say even between minds, but we know electricity will go through certain elements and won't go through other elements. And so one of the pieces I think that has wonderful humor at the museum is this electronic device sitting on top of a tallow that's plugged in, and you think that energy is going in and out. I mean, you say, well, we know that energy can't go in and out of tallow, this is ridiculous, but possibly tallow is the storage of energy, and we can put it in and save it and take it out when we need it and use it, so it's quite symbolic, all of that. Yeah. And I think that felt is also an insulator.
As far as I remember, my first spontaneous thoughts were that it would be a wonderful opportunity to try and bring to the people in New York some idea of the reality of a figure who's become a myth. Mm-hmm. I think particularly in the United States, where he's not known for his work, he's known for his image as a cult figure. Well, myths are always partly self-made, but myths are what our system of culture thrives on. And until you have a chance to verify a myth, whether it's self-made or media projected, against the reality, which in this case is sculpture, you cannot judge at all whether this is just a product of the media you're talking about. And where Beuys is concerned, the image of the myth has become particularly confusing, partly I think because there's a different attitude towards big cultural figures in Europe. In America, it seems to me, I may be wrong, that a myth can be created on very little knowledge of the totality of what a person is trying to do. On my part, any effort to make a big public exhibition or a publication is always for me an attempt to demythify. What I do try to do in my work is to not to damage the complexity of something an artist like Beuys is trying to do, but to put it into language which is accessible. And that's quite difficult. I mean, it's difficult even to install a complex exhibition so that it can be read, but to try and put the concepts and the philosophy that lie behind it into terms that people can understand in a catalogue or a book, I think is even more difficult. With the catalogue, I wanted to use as much as possible of the artist's own words, since with Beuys's work, that seems to be what interests people most of all. His own interpretation of his own motives, above all. For me, a lot of the writing about Beuys, as you know, is extremely complicated and complex and very long words and all this kind of thing. I wanted to see if it was possible to write a simple language text and keep the complexity of the ideas with some clarity. And this is principally an exhibition catalogue. It's an enormous amount of work about a character who's been presented as extremely mystifying. And the intention of the catalogue is certainly not to demystify, but to clarify the things in the work which are very important. If you're dealing with an artist who has tried to merge the life process and the thinking process with the working process, then none of the information is esoteric. It's all equally important. What is wrong, I think, is for writers or critics to join in the esoteric process to make it even more removed from a public. I mean, a semiologist comes usually from a certain ideological background and will use the work as a vehicle to promote his own or her own school of philosophy. In this case, I think it's quite enough to cope with the philosophy and the possible contradictions in the work that's already presented. I think the most important function, and the one which may have the most long-term meaning, is this attempt to demonstrate how far you can push sculpture as a means of communication, not as sculpture itself, but as a vehicle for all these different themes, for everything really, from the normal events of life like birth to attempts to find complex metaphorical, symbolical means of expressing political theory. Once you've expressed very clearly, as he has, that the essence of life and the essence of the perception of the energy of life lies in our contact with the material world, that's a clear enough way of saying that any material is potentially an artistic carrier of meaning. I would take the question the other way around and say, why is there any material which is not considered suitable? Well, if you start from the standpoint that life is the process of art and art is the process of life, and that what is lacking in modern life is a sense of the wholeness, the relationship between the way we live physically, the way we think, the way we feel. And you ask yourself, how can all these things be brought together so that we don't exist simply as materialist beings and we don't exist simply as ineffective spiritual freakouts or dropouts? Where Beuys is concerned, the basic philosophy is that bringing those two together means being a better materialist. If you accept the idea that everyone is an artist, and that by the most important function of living is the way we organize things, physical things to begin with, I mean, our first activity as human beings is to organize our environment in a personal way and then in a social way. That means what must have been lost is the intensity of feeling for this physical environment, i.e. materials. What's also been lost is the motivation to do more than personal things with this material, the material we live with. And when you talk about the energy of materials, I take it as meaning that you associate the personal response engendered by material with the will to organize material in life, and therefore with the will to organize on a bigger social plane, and to reject the purely personal. The approach from Tom Messer was made in 1976 at a very good time for thinking about organizing this kind of thing. From Beuys's own point of view, it seemed to be the right time. As you know, before, he'd turned down offers from American museums here in New York.
Do you know what? Can you tell us why?
Well, that was the specific reason was because it was still during the Nixon era, the Vietnam War and things like that. The other reason was that the way Messer approached the idea was a very open way, unusually open for a museum. Really a carte blanche to Beuys to set up his own exhibition and select his own works and do it as he pleased. The museums were very full with their exhibitions, acquisitions. The private collections consist of an enormous amount of pop art, minimal art, American conceptual art. While in a way it's a form of hospitality towards American artists, it was very glaringly obvious that it was not reciprocal. I don't know how many living European artists you can think of who've had big exhibitions in America or who are well represented in American museums.
While they're alive, particularly.
They're alive, yes. And this is obviously not correct, and from the European perspective it does look like a very heavy example of a certain form of American cultural domination. And Beuys is recognizably one of Europe's major artists, and in a way this is a European product. And the tradition of European art to which Beuys does belong, that's his sources and his development come out of the European tradition, has much more to do with meaning, which is why I think it's possible for him to extend this meaning into life, social work, political work. Yes, again, if one really genuinely accepts the idea that everyone is an artist and that it's the restrictions put on the term artist which are damaging, then obviously everything is social sculpture. The Free University, by its nature, has to be the contributions of many people. Beuys brings to it his own very powerful energy, his own very deep understanding of the processes of life and how they affect negative political situations and how they could produce an alternative. I think the notoriety stemming from a highly controversial and obviously very effective way of teaching in an institution like an academy in Germany. I mean, you have to remember what that means. That usually means a master, the teacher, and a situation similar to apprentices. It's an extremely traditional system, which he bust open by admitting hundreds of students. And the things the media often concentrates on, like his manner of dress and the way he makes maximum use of the artist's license as being unaccountable to anyone else. I think he uses all these things very, very deliberately and very skillfully.
Yes, I was in charge of handling and organizing the shipment in general. And right from the beginning, I had to work out a contract with the shipping agency that had to be able to transport all those fragile objects that were of which most of them were not in a condition to be shipped to the United States anyhow. So we had to make very careful arrangements. We had to work very closely with the shipping agent, had to go to every place where an object had to be picked up personally, had to inspect it, had to describe and define precisely what sort of packing, wrapping and crating had to be made. Like this copper table could have been damaged if we would have taken off the patina of the surface.
Yeah.
It would have been a damage that is practically impossible to repair. So that is just a good example of how many things we had to keep in mind. Or a big wooden piece that is called The Lost Sleep of My Family would have been damaged if we had taken off the dust that sits on the surface. So I wanted to say that we really had to...
Is that digestible?
That we really had to go to every place where a single object had to be picked up. And we had to give a special contract, a paper to the shipping agent to tell them exactly how to proceed and what to do.
Did he know that you were hungry?
Probably, I don't know. I don't know. We had to think of shipping a few pieces by air because they wouldn't have survived a sea transport. Then some pieces like the so-called fat chair had to go in a climatized special container. I think I must have contacted 150 persons, and it was a manual work of altogether of about 3 months. Just the wrapping, crating. I designed all crates individually because I had some previous experience since I worked with Josef now for about 7 years. Why, particularly if we stand in this room, certain things have to be together here, and other things could be by their own or isolated on different positions on the ramp here. There will be, of course, the so-called documenta sculpture, which is part of the documenta sculpture. Is this piece, the 2 copper tables with some electronic equipment that will later come in. Then here behind you, you see part of the felt piles. There will be 9 felt piles, about 1.5 yard high, and on top there will be the copper sheets. But there will be more in it here. There will be a tent in one corner, a felt tent. Right. And there might be the piano, the silent piano, and other things, of course, from the Stroyer collection. I mean, the relation of the objects, the way we had to install them in the museum. Yeah. And we were not prepared to do any concessions. We were not about to work against the museum. We wanted to do something that even Frank Lloyd Wright, who hated paintings, would agree to it in a negative way, but for us in a positive way. We would just take everything and set it down, just that without any composition. Just set it down with any little means or any little advices to straighten things up or to use the museum as it is usually being used for all those exhibitions. Beuys had this clear concept, and we were not prepared to step we were not prepared to go one step away from it. Just set everything down exactly where we could set it down, where we had space, where the floor is strong enough to hold a large object, and we would use the spiral the way you have to use the spiral. We would start chronologically with an first object, with an early object, and go all the way down. The visitors would go up to the last floor and walk down. So the first object is the first object that relates to Beuys' beginning as a sculpture, the bathtub. This object that also strongly represents this vision of Beuys of that life and work, or life and art is one thing. Beuys is usually against any composition. He just has the feeling that if he has to place something, he just places it by setting it down on the floor, and that's all. So just takes the pieces more or less inside and sets them down. You don't deal with the space at all. No one has ever been concerned with the space during the installation of this exhibition, and it doesn't get its spiritual significance from the space around it. It will certainly look different in a different space, but this has the space itself. Beuys he's never really concerned with, except for certain environments that fit into a certain space or that were done for a certain space, like the tram stop in Venice. We met in 1969 in one evening where Beuys performed in Berlin, and radical political students stormed the stage and destroyed the piece, and I tried to defend and protect some of the installations. And later on this very same night I met Beuys. Every day I went back to the museum from morning to night, and that was before I met Beuys, and that had a tremendous impact on me. It made me at least thinking what I should do, and it shocked me and it frightened me and it attracted me tremendously. Very subjective, even a very romantic relationship. I wrote several books on his works, and I just prepared another exhibition, and it became part of my life. And the benefit of it is the benefit you have with every experience that you think is necessary for your life. It is just as, for me, it's just as necessary as having something to drink and something to eat. The pieces of tallow were too large to fit through the normal delivery entrance door. So we had to work something out, and the most convenient thing was to take this window out and set up a crane in front of the street and build a little bridge or platform and slide in those huge pieces. It is the largest show he had so far, and the organization of such an exhibition involved a lot of time and a lot of manual work, and in so far it's completely different. It had a lot of, this exhibition had a lot to do with organization, with a tremendous effort, with problems of organization, and in so far it is a very new experience for Beuys and myself. But as you may know, that Beuys would have never done this exhibition if he wasn't personally approached by, if he wouldn't have been personally approached by Thomas Messer to do this exhibition. He rejected an exhibition of the Museum of Modern Art some years ago, and he would have felt not to act correctly if he would have said half a year ago, I don't like to do this exhibition. But the very personal invitation and the interest of Thomas Messer made him sticking to this project. Otherwise, he probably would have abandoned the project, and because for him it's a kind of Wanderzirkus.
Yeah. What kind of circus?
Wanderzirkus.
What does it mean?
A circus that's traveling from one place to another.
The fact that Beuys is obviously disinterested in creating objects, in making works of art in the conventional way, and that, on the contrary, what remains as art is a result of a particular and significant event in his life, fills it with a certain content that is unlike what so much of what is seen today can claim. So it is this intensity and the lack of distinction between a testimony of a life situation and the ultimate transformation of such testimony into an object that I feel to be Beuys's very particular asset. Now with Beuys, this question of quality and excellence and so on doesn't have the same ring, because he at the creative stage these qualities are not perceptible. He is neither particularly concerned with what traditionally is called beauty, nor is that the idea. He is concerned with intensity of meaning, which has the possibility in time to be perceived as beauty, usually not initially. And that is, of course, an experience that anyone who has studied art history, and particularly the history of modern art, is thoroughly aware of. When Cézanne, or the Impressionists for that matter, to say nothing of Picasso or Kandinsky, created their first works in a inventive idiom of their own, the question was not whether people thought it was good or bad. They did not see it as art. And I think we are at this stage with Beuys, where in the absence of continuity or sufficient exposure, the impression is that this is something other than art, and it will take some time. Well, I think it will have effects on many levels. The people who have followed advanced contemporary art know, of course, about Beuys, and for them I think it will be a chance to see a concentrated group of his major works together in a way in which it has never been seen, and enjoy, as I do, an impact and an intensity which is rare and quite unique. For the general public, I think it will be a very difficult introduction. I think it will probably be largely misunderstood. The questions that are likely to be asked are not easily answered. Since Joseph Beuys has never been seen in any such expanse in the United States, at least, and I doubt that he has been seen anywhere in this fullness, and given our sense of his importance and his position among creative thinkers, it seemed natural to us to do this. Without any question, perhaps the most ambitious undertaking that we have ever launched into, and I'm amazed myself that we should be so close to the opening and that everything should have fallen into place so effectively. So my impression is that we are at the verge of a rather magnificent occasion. Even if the answers are not forthcoming, and even if the questions are not perhaps correctly posed, it does initially open up a awareness of something, no matter how mysterious, no matter how far-fetched, that will result, even with the general public, in a broadening of the art concept, in a ultimately greater awareness of what art is about. I regard the entire show another creative expression made of individual components, and of course only Beuys could have done the show that way. The show would normally not be installable. No curator, no director could have gathered those pieces and combined them into the kind of unity that Beuys has achieved himself by considering the show and working with it in a still new and stirring context. Financial problems seemed insurmountable to me. It has been a very difficult thing to finance this.
Has the scale been much broader than other financial?
It has been a very expensive thing to do, yes, but it also has been a particularly valuable thing to do. So when he was here, I asked him to do the show. He agreed, and implicitly we assumed responsibility for everything else. One could have, as I thought occasionally one could have reached for certain aids that would make things stand up straight or hang more manageably, or there were many things in which the building could have been made more serviceable in a technical sense. He has grasped intuitively or otherwise all the problems and has removed them by transcending it. And this is really what I meant by saying that he has neither adjusted himself nor has he fought it. He has remained himself within a space to which he accorded full autonomy.
Yeah.
What Joseph Beuys does, he considers the consequences of situations emanating from the works of art, an extension of his art itself, and speaks of social sculpture, speaks of situations that are as much the formation of a creative imagination as the work itself. So in that respect, there is no difference between Mondrian and Beuys. The difference begins with Mondrian's readiness to leave it at that. Beuys, I think, argues this point through his work and himself undertakes to carry it from those silent and metaphoric aspects into life situation where he accompanies it into its ultimate effects. Now, of course, there is somewhere a threshold in which it perhaps ceases to be art in this immune sense at least and becomes something else, becomes life. At this moment, Beuys and his work is no longer enjoying the immunity of art because the consequences will be judged in life situations rather than in art situations. That too is a very interesting point.
So
the one that to me has had the most explicit meaning was Tram Stop, because I was in Venice when this work stood in the midsection of the German pavilion, and as I said when I introduced Dr. Galwitz, who spoke about him the other day at the Guggenheim Museum, it was the moment of my conversion to Beuys. Suddenly things became clear when I saw this, and so seeing it here now, even though it is lying down, in other words, even though it has become in the meantime a museum piece rather than a living conveyor of art contents, I find particularly moving, but many others.
You tell me when you're ready.
I'm ready.
Okay. Herr Dahlem, wie sind Sie überhaupt mit Beuys zuerst zusammengekommen? Wie waren die Anfänge?
Ich habe mit Heiner Friedrich in München die Galerie Friedrich und Dahlem gehabt. 1964 ist der Heiner von einer Reise zurückgekommen und hat Zeichnungen von Beuys mitgebracht. Die habe ich das erste Mal gesehen in einem Konvolut mit anderen Zeichnungen, zum Beispiel von Sigmar Polke oder Palermo. Sagte der Heiner zu mir, das ist ein sehr komplizierter, schwieriger Mann. Ich habe 1967 in Düsseldorf den Palermo besucht. Und der Palermo hat mich gefragt, willst du mal den Beuys kennenlernen? Und dann habe ich gesagt, ja, sehr gern. Beuys war zu Hause, hat sich sehr gefreut, seinen Schüler Palermo zu sehen. Hat mich gekannt, einen Namen nach. Ich habe ihn ja auch namentlich gekannt. Und wir waren uns von Anfang an eigentlich sympathisch. Ich habe 1967 mit Heiner Friedrich zusammen für den Herrn Ströer die Krauser-Kollektion in Amerika erworben. Diese Krauser-Kollektion hat einen Teil einer Sammlung gebildet dann in Europa, die hieß Sammlung 1968 Karl Ströer. Die wurde in verschiedenen Museen Europas ausgestellt. Das Wichtige war, dass ich vorher schon mit Beuys einen sehr guten Arbeitskontakt hatte. Beuys hat bei mir in Darmstadt eine Aktion gemacht, die heißt Hauptstrom, Mainstream in Englisch. Und für mich war das selbstverständlich. In Europa war ein großes Interesse. Pop Art war ja wirklich ein unglaubliches Gerücht in der Zeit. Und verschiedene Museen haben sich an uns gewandt und haben uns gefragt, ob sie diese Sache, bevor sie in Darmstadt installiert wird, ausstellen dürfen. Wir haben sie aber trotzdem genommen, weil unsere Galerie ist sehr arm gewesen, von 1963 bis 1967. Und wir haben auch nur mit einem sekundären Material der Künstler, die wir eigentlich verehrt haben, gearbeitet. Und auf einmal hatten wir eben Originale. Wir haben diese Originale dann im Grunde genommen, oder den Originalbegriff, der noch mit der Sammlung verbunden war, dadurch verstärkt, dass wir das eingebracht haben, was uns von Europa her interessiert hatte und was uns über Herrn Krausers Sammlung an Künstlern auch noch interessiert hatte. Das war sehr früh der Walter de Maria, das war Dan Flavin, das war Karl Andre, das war John Chamberlain, das war Donald Judd, die nicht in der Krauser Sammlung vertreten waren, außer Chamberlain, die wir aber erwerben konnten, also von den Künstlern einzelne Arbeiten. Und jetzt kommt eben das Allerwichtigste. Beuys als ganz großer Stratege hat natürlich sofort begriffen, dass das eine Situation ist, der er sich ebenbürtig entgegenstellen kann. Beuys hat ja schon mal eine Performance gemacht in Berlin, die hieß Der Chef, mit, ich glaube, in Zusammenarbeit mit McCunas in New York. Ja. Das Guggenheim Museum hat sich, glaube ich, 1968 nach der Documenta bereits an Beuys gewandt und Beuys gebeten um eine Ausstellung. Beuys hat eben in Europa eine politische und pädagogische Aufgabe und diese Ausstellungen, die kosten ihn ja selber sehr viel Zeit an Organisation, an Arbeitseinsatz und so. Und dadurch hat es sehr lange gedauert, bis diese Ausstellung dann wirklich realisiert wurde.
Was hat das mit diesem Raum zu tun, im Guggenheim, in dem die Werke nun stehen?
Die Ausstellung im Guggenheim Museum hat einen wirklichen Vorzug gegen allen Ausstellungen, die der Beuys bisher gemacht hat. Und deswegen war es auch berechtigt, dass der Beuys mit 60 Jahren sich noch mit diese Mühe gemacht hat, diese Ausstellung aufzubauen. Hat das erst einmal für einzelne Arbeiten optimale Raumbedingungen. Und das meine ich wirklich ganz in Quadratmeterzahlen oder in Raumhöhen, also wie hoch Meter sind. Und das Gebäude sieht ja von außen ein bisschen undefinierbar aus, also sehr geschlossen, sehr hermetisch. Es könnte auch ein Helm zum Beispiel als Vorstellung außen sein oder ein Turban, also mehr wie eine Bedeckung. Während innen, das ist mir in diesen ganzen 3 Wochen aufgefallen, mich einzelne Elemente an Gaudi erinnert haben, an den Spanier Gaudi. Und es gab eine Situation, wenn zum Beispiel alle Leute raus waren, Beuys noch allein oben gearbeitet hat mit dem Heiner Bastian. Und dann bin ich so ganz allein durch das Haus gegangen. Sie waren auch da mit ihrem Team manchmal und da hat es verschiedene Lichter gegeben durch die Aufnahmen. Da habe ich den Charakter von der Kathedrale innen gespürt. Und Stadtmuseum würde ich eigentlich fast einen religiösen Begriff einführen wollen. Also fast wie in einer Kirche.
Was sind bestimmte Arbeiten, weil zum Beispiel das da unten, die High-Galerie?
Natürlich, der Beuys ist jetzt 60 Jahre alt und wenn man Duchamp oder Schwitters oder Malevich nimmt, was alles verehrungswürdige Künstler sind, die auch mit politischen Ideen in die Gesellschaft einwirken wollten, das ist ja im Grunde genommen auch von den Amerikanern akzeptiert worden. Ein Mann, der praktisch als Gast hier in dieses Land kommt, kann natürlich nicht unmittelbar eine politische Aktivität entfalten, die mit Ergebnissen sofort sichtbar wird. Aber er kann die Sympathien zum Beispiel, die in diesem Land sind, oder Leute, die, sagen wir mal, in seiner Richtung denken oder arbeiten haben, zum Punkt der Konzentration führen.
30.
Beuys war nie ein Künstler, der durch den Kunsthandel aufgebaut wurde oder durch den Kunsthandel überhaupt sein Werk realisieren konnte. Gott sei Dank selber eine unglaublich gute Ökonomie gehabt sein Leben lang. Er ist praktisch sehr spät dem Kunsthandel wirklich zum Teil in die Finger gefallen. Beuys hat sein Werk zusammengehalten bis zu seinem 50. Lebensjahr und hat dann wichtige Teile seines Werkes. Der Beuys hat manchmal Künstlerkollegen Arbeiten geschenkt. Oder er hat auch einmal dem einen oder anderen Händler, wie zum Beispiel Herrn Klein oder Herrn Schmäler, Arbeiten zur Verfügung gestellt, weil der Beuys natürlich nicht ganz auf diesen Begriff des Kunsthandels verzichten wollte. Die sind dann aus seinem Atelier rausgegangen, zum Beispiel Zeichnungen für 150 bis 300 Mark. Das ist das Gesetz von Angebot und Nachfrage. Die großen Konvolute existieren in festen Besitzen. Das wenige, was frei geworden ist der Spekulation natürlich ausgeliefert. Und das bedeutet, dass eine Zeichnung, für die der Beuys vielleicht 150 Mark kriegt, heute für 15 und 30 und 40.000 Mark verhandelt wird. Aber es hat nichts mehr mit der Arbeit von Beuys zu tun.
Ja.
But the thing I like about this show, it shows that that's not easily attainable in terms of a short period of time, but things that have depth, meaning and power usually come after a definite form of struggle, trauma, and especially dealing with one's one's instincts and feelings, because really feelings are really what we have to go on, and we start from there. And the work in this show for me is great visual experience, because it's about and a good example of somebody who's been working with life for a long time and sticking out, and probably how I can say taking an extraordinary line, working outside a known framework. A lot of people work in known frameworks and it's comfortable and it's a lot easier, but once you start working in an unknown framework, it gets very lonely and very hard. That's interesting, because I always felt very drawn to the pictures, but could never find, didn't know how I could ever find out what was going on in them. And every time I looked at the pictures, I had one question in my mind, and that was, I would love to know what's going on here. How can I find out more? And I would
Do you think that the nature of the work becomes clear in this space?
In this space?
Yeah.
Yeah, probably through the spiral.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I think he doesn't care so much about the space. I think
Usually these openings are for people clustering around, people crowded, scattered, and the work of art, you just have to look around the people to see it.
Well, what's the spark?
The spark?
Why is everyone here? What's the spark? What's the attraction?
Sorry.
Is that what is Joe's over there? Are you doing it with him?
Yeah, let's go out there. We'll check him out. How's it been going, Robert?
It's okay. Yeah. It's a bit crowded.
Been an exciting night for you?
Well, I find the people really strange.
Can you speak a little bit about what your impressions of the show were?
Pardon?
How did you like the work tonight?
But very exciting.
Did you make a special trip to see it?
Well, partly I would say, yes. In Europe he's a man of great stature, and everyone, well not everyone, but the people who are fond of art are very much aware of it. The whole place is crowded with people, and you are putting these questions. Well, to be very sincere, I've got the impression that this is very much of a social gathering.
Right.
I have my doubts whether they are here, I mean, basically for his art.
Yeah, let me tell you.
Just come forward.
Anything. I just really don't know anything. I would love any information I could possibly get.
It's not just the object, it's the man. He's more than his work, which he's stated many times. And I think he's a political person, a social person. There's a lot more to him than just the objects that you see in there. Just the fact that he has come out of Germany, which is right now to grow up in Germany during the period that he grew up, is a very political process. Life is politics, isn't it? In a way, and he certainly represents it.
I know some Germans and they hired me.
Yeah.
That's basically it, yeah. My involvement was simply placing some colored glass and some metal frames for the arena piece. It's photographs, memorabilia of works and ideas placed in frames, and the frames are 100 frames and they're stacked up, not visible but may alternate at any given time.
Yeah.
I don't want my picture.
Okay. What are your impressions of the show?
I think it's the ugliest show that's ever been in this museum. Decadent, like concentration camps, but I don't care about that. It wasn't really art. Someone said to me that this museum kills a lot of art that's put in it. Well, I think this art kills this museum.
Oh, fantastic. Pretty positive. That's great. Hi.
I think that first of all that Beuys is just aesthetically it's beautiful. I mean, he's the best draftsman living today, and that people have to, I mean, a lot of people are just taking it from the art part of it, you know, but if you go beyond, of course, there's the whole political thing, but I don't think it's necessary to even, you know, I think there's too many people, and I think that people are much more interested in looking at everybody else and drinking and just, I mean, it seems like this is the scene, the place to be tonight, and nobody's really thinking about the art.
What I said was I disagree, because I think everybody here is probably going to come back. I disagree with what she said, that everybody's just involved with this opening. Some kind of a knowledge that what's there is is very penetrating, very probing. For instance, the cage and the hatchet. I think it's hard to verbalize his work. I also paint, and I think it has a very profound influence on me.
It seemed very interesting. It seemed to be doing something that American and New York artists were not doing, and seemed to be a certain intensity that was not happening in New York City. It seemed to be without a certain structure that's happening in New York City.
You want me to call you in about an hour? Half an hour?
Yeah, if you want, call me whatever time you get free tonight. We'll make the arrangement. I'll bring as much material as I possibly can up there.
Me too.
And if we can go together, that would be kind of nice. Because we can walk from the train. We can walk from the train, John.
Evening.
What the fuck is this? You call this a microphone?
I had a dream about him. I swear to God, I had this dream about him. I was in trouble. I was going to be raped. Someone was grabbing me, and I saw the pack. I thought it was New Jersey. I thought it was a power plant, but it was actually the pack with the lights on.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh God, I'm saved, you know? And I went up to him, and because I saw his picture on the wall, and I ran up to him and put my arms around him.
You don't have to write it down.
Sure.
Go get a film of me?
Yeah, I go.
I think that this is the end of the 80s.
Yeah?
Look at the publicity that's had already. Look at the people who are here. They're going to react better to this than anything else. This will, well, who knows? Joseph took these pieces out of a lot of these pieces out of private collectors' homes, and is going to reinstall them at his own expense and his own time back in Europe. And that's a very unusual situation because that doesn't happen normally in contemporary art. I think Joseph Beuys is the most significant European artist of the contemporary period, and a lot of American artists could learn a lot from him, even though the sensibility is essentially European sensibility. There's very little real attention paid to his work, and he's a very underrated artist, even though he's here at the Guggenheim. I feel very privileged, in a sense, to have been invited because Joseph wanted my tapes shown, or his tapes, or our tapes, shown in the museum, and the museum called me up and wanted to buy my tapes, wanted to hire me as a consultant, allowed me to create the spaces that the tapes were shown at, and got the equipment that was necessary. And
Was there damage, Joseph?
No.
Just electricity?
No, there was only to see the effect of the thing.
Yeah.
And future packing, we must do it better.
Yeah.
Comes from Antwerp.
Private owner?
Possession.
Yeah.
That's why you really have to make it all with your hands.
Yeah.
You know, we had a special container and all this only for this.
Okay, so
beeswax and all those things.
Oh, we'll get the information.
Kommt hier gleich rüber. Vorsichtig, ne?
But I don't think that anger is the right word. I personally find this intriguing because of its basically there's definitely a certain element of perfection and level of detail that went into this. But at the same time, there's this kind of simplicity that makes people not notice the detail. which is what intrigued me about it.
Yeah.
Audience that our interview was in English. Factory, not that this Feuerstätte. Feuerstätte 2, second, how do you say? Wait a moment, Feuerstelle, you know.
Feuerstadt, what's that?
The word in English.
Free state?
Wait a moment. Don't.
Okay. Okay.
I don't know the word in English for Feuerstätte. It's common
Federico.
I tell you later about Feuerstätte. She's right here. And so we can go on. I need only this for this work. Very good.
I didn't react to it as though it were an installed piece of work.
Yeah.
I don't have much reaction to it at all. Not necessarily. I don't particularly like it.
Uh-huh.
Like it.
Yeah. What is it about it that you like?
It's an interesting use of a ramp. The fact that the sleds are tailing downhill out of the back of a Volkswagen minibus.
Right.
I think it's a reasonably nice statement on Volkswagen minibuses. They hold a lot and things can come pouring out the ass end of them.
Sounds like
Static waterfall of sleds.
Well, I thought it was some kind of equipment that somebody would be using up in Alaska.
Right.
And I was trying to figure out whether it was an actual display or somebody's idea of art. Usually rescue operations.
Well, I thought that the ground floor sculpture looked like giant masses of tooth decay. It reminded me of the feelings I have when I go to the dentist and open my mouth. They looked like it wasn't that pleasant. And when I walked up the ramp and saw the rescue squad, I was trying to understand if it was being done, you know, what the reasons were. And as far as the rescue squad goes, I wonder if the artist is trying to say that it seems to be a ski patrol sort of rescue situation. If the artist is trying to say that art in the 70s needs to be rescued, or this country needs to be rescued from something, if that's the kind of statement that they're trying to make. As far as the little skull, they look like skull-type things on each ski, and I don't know if it represents people or just decay, just like the tooth decay on the ground floor. It just seems to be a very depressing sort of feeling. The Red Cross symbol on the wrapped piano legs, and maybe the organic matter is a feeling of life. You know, let's create some sort of life from all this. Well, in every ending, there's always a beginning. All of this seems to be very much of an ending feeling. There is.
Well, which is the work? I mean, is that the assembled work down below or not?
It is assembled, yes.
But I rather thought that somebody I thought the building was falling down, personally, and also bits of a junkyard, and then really, it doesn't mean anything to me other than somebody's parked a Volkswagen, and there's an enormous number of sledges, and where are the dogs, or the men, and it doesn't move me. It has no artistic value at all. I'm intrigued that somebody has spent an awful lot of time wrapping them up and tidying them up in exactly the same way, but other than that, it's really, I equate it with a load of bricks at the Tate Gallery. I don't really think, I mean, if that's a sculpture, then it's extraordinary. I mean, it's sculpting, in, as far as I'm concerned, is either carving in wood or in stone, and eventual casting in bronze. That's sculpture to me, but not that. Well, it doesn't shatter me. I mean, oh, shatter to me is an English word, meaning I'm absolutely staggered. And I don't understand it at all, and I don't see its purpose. I mean, if it was a show of if it was a show or a museum in which people went to see what went on in the Arctic or how people lived in icy conditions, and that there was, it's almost like a ski swap sale. Which one of these sleds would you like to take home today? It doesn't really do anything for me at all. I thought somebody had parked a Volkswagen, and these, until somebody said that's part of the exhibit, I didn't believe it. I thought there were men going to do some work tomorrow. And I still think that it's absolute rubbish. That is not art. And I would never consider it art. Maybe I'm old-fashioned, but that's not art by any manner of means. Okay.
People coming down.